Imagine a film so shocking, so disturbing, that audiences screamed, fainted, and demanded their money back. A film banned for decades across the world, labeled too grotesque to be shown. And yet, nearly a century later, it's hailed as one of the most important horror films ever made. That film is Freaks 1932. A twisted carnival tale directed by Tod Browning, the same man who gave us Dracula. But unlike gothic vampires and haunted castles, this story dared to stare at real human difference. And the world wasn't ready for it. In the early 1930s, MGM was looking to cash in on the booming horror craze. Universal Pictures had just struck gold with Frankenstein and Dracula, terrifying audiences while making huge profits. MGM turned to Tod Browning, who was already famous for his eerie, macabre style. But Browning had a darker idea. Instead of monsters created in laboratories, he wanted to show real people with physical disabilities and unusual conditions, sideshow performers he had met during his years traveling with carnivals. The studio agreed, thinking it would be just another horror hit. But what Browning crafted was something different, part tragedy, part revenge tale, part shocking love story. Unlike other Hollywood productions, Freaks did not rely on makeup or special effects. It featured real-life circus performers, Harry and Daisy Earls, proportionate dwarf siblings who had worked in vaudeville, Johnny Eck, the half-boy, born without lower limbs, Prince Randian, the living torso, who could roll cigarettes with just his mouth, Schlitzie, a performer with microcephaly, often labeled Pinhead by cruel audiences of the era. For the first time, Hollywood wasn't hiding physical difference with makeup. It was putting it front and center. The story follows Cleopatra, a cruel trapeze artist, and her lover, Hercules. Together, they conspire to seduce and swindle Hans, a wealthy little person, out of his fortune. But when Cleopatra mocks and humiliates the circus freaks, they band together in one of cinema's most unforgettable revenge sequences. A beautiful and conniving artist named Cleopatra seduces a dwarf named Hans after learning of his large inheritance. This is much to the chagrin of Frida, his fiancée, also a dwarf. Cleopatra also conspires with circus strongman Hercules to kill Hans so she will inherit his wealth. Meanwhile, other romances flourish among the sideshow performers. The who is in love with a human skeleton gives birth to their daughter. The news is spread among the friends by Separding. Additionally, Violet, whose sister Daisy is married to Roscoe, the stuttering circus clown, becomes engaged to the circus's owner. Hans, enamored with Cleopatra, ultimately marries her. At their wedding, Cleopatra begins poisoning Hans's wine, but drunkenly kisses Hercules in front of Hans, 5, revealing her affair. Oblivious, the other freaks announce that they accept Cleopatra in spite of her being a normal outsider. They hold an initiation ceremony in which they pass around the table while chanting, "We accept her, one of us. We accept her, one of us. Gooble gobble, gooble gobble." However, Cleopatra's mean-spirited amusement at this ceremony soon turns into fear and anger after Hercules jokes that the rest of the entertainers plan to turn her into one of them. She mocks them, tosses the wine in their faces, and drives them away before berating Hans and drunkenly parading him around on her shoulders like a child. The humiliated Hans realizes that he has been played for a fool and rejects Cleopatra's attempts to apologize. But then he falls ill from the poison. While bedridden, Hans apologizes to Cleopatra and also takes the poison medicine that she is giving him. But he secretly plots with the other entertainers to strike back at Cleopatra and Hercules. In the film's climax, Hans confronts Cleopatra with 3 of the entertainers as backup thugs. However, Hans's circus wagon is overturned in a storm, giving Cleopatra the chance to escape into the forest, closely pursued by them. At the same time, Hercules goes to kill sea lion trainer Venus for knowing about the plot. Venus's boyfriend, Frozzo the clown, attempts to stop Hercules but is nearly killed before the rest of them intervene and injure Hercules. 5. Saving Frozzo. They all pursue an injured Hercules. The freaks then capture Cleopatra, and sometime later, she is shown to be a grotesque, squawking human on display for carnival patrons. Her tongue has been removed. One eye has been gouged out. The flesh of her hands has been melted and deformed to look like duck feet. Her legs have been cut off, and what is left of her torso has been permanently. In the original version of the film, it is revealed that after the freaks caught Hercules, they made him into a singer. While some versions end on Cleopatra as the human duck, another ending shows Hans, now living in a mansion from his inheritance and still humiliated, visited by Frozzo, Venus, and Frida. Frida tells Hans she knows he just wanted to demand the bottle of poison from Cleopatra, not to mutilate her, and not to blame himself for what happened, and that she still loves him. The two then share a heartwarming hug. The test screenings were a disaster. Reports say that some audience members fled the theater in terror. Others vomited in their seats. One woman even threatened to sue the studio, claiming the film had caused her to miscarry. MGM panicked. They demanded nearly 30 minutes of the most graphic footage be cut. Gone were many of the more grotesque revenge scenes and the original tragic ending. But even with the cuts, audiences weren't ready. Critics called it brutal and grotesque. The film was banned in the UK for over 30 years. In several US states, censors flat out refused to screen it. In Canada, it wasn't shown at all until the 1960s. For Tod Browning, the Backlash destroyed his career. Once one of Hollywood's most respected directors, he never recovered from the scandal. But here's the twist. Over time, Freaks was rediscovered. In the 1960s and 70s, as counterculture movements embraced outsider art, the film gained a cult following. People began to see it not as a cruel exploitation piece, but as a radical statement on humanity. The film's chilling chant, "One of us," became iconic. Horror fans saw it as a rallying cry, a symbol of belonging for anyone who felt different or marginalized. Scholars and critics later reinterpreted Freaks as ahead of its time, showing the cruelty of normal people while depicting the so-called freaks as loyal, kind, and ultimately victorious. Today, Freaks is considered a milestone in horror history. It influenced generations of filmmakers from David Lynch's surreal nightmares to Guillermo del Toro's fascination with monsters who reflect the best and worst of humanity. It forced audiences to confront uncomfortable questions. Who are the real monsters? The ones with physical differences, or the ones who exploit and mock them? Though once despised, Freaks is now preserved in the United States National Film Registry as a work of cultural and historical significance. What started as a box office disaster is now remembered as one of the most daring, controversial, and powerful horror films ever made. A movie too real for 1932, but essential today. Because Freaks didn't just terrify audiences, it challenged them. And nearly a century later, it still asks the same chilling question: who is truly the freak?